For over 100 years, Iowa State University Extension and Outreach has been serving Iowans. As our state recovers from COVID-19, we will continue to deliver information and education based on research to help you care for your family, manage stress, and support your community, your business, and your farm. We're here for you now, and we will be for the next 100 years. Together, we will build a strong Iowa.
Tips from Expert. Welcome everyone to today's Tips from an Expert. I think I was muted for a second in true pandemic fashion. All right, so check that off your bingo card. Somebody already had to tell me to unmute. All right, we are jumping into today's topic, celebrating Financial Literacy Month. We have one of our family finance specialists joining us. Barb, welcome.
Hello, glad
and
to be
you're
here.
unmuted. Yay. So far, so good. Awesome. So yeah, you've got a lot of info to share today, and I'm ecstatic because I'm pretty sure the topics you kind of hinted at wanting to talk about, I'm like, I need that, I need that, I need that. No pressure.
Yeah, we don't have magic wands.
No, but you do have some really solid information
Yes.
that's evidence-based, and that's as close to magic as I think we can get these days.
Yes.
Well, I'm excited to have you here. This is your inaugural, your very first Facebook Live, right?
Ever, anywhere.
Yes. Okay, so I hope that we just get like a flood of questions and comments so that you can just really feel the excitement. Again, today's Tips from an Expert is we're here, we're celebrating, it's Financial Literacy Month. And, you know, Barb, this is her job, is family finance. Like, she not only has the knowledge, but she has the experience. How many years have you been serving communities?
I'm at 25 years as a family finance specialist.
Yeah, so you've got a few years under your belt and experience, and you've seen a lot of trends, things come and go, and
Sure.
those lasting
Sure.
ideas. Yeah, Andrea said asking for a friend, right? Me too. Like, how do you save money? Asking for a friend. Okay,
Yes.
Let's jump in and learn. Again, if you're watching this live or after the live's over, the comment section is wide open. Ask your questions, share your aha moments, or let us know maybe some financial literacy things that have worked well for you or your family, or worked well as you were growing up in your own home. All right, you ready, Barb?
Sure. Let's
We're jumping
go.
in. And I'm going to be flooding the comment section with links to all kinds of great resources that align with the content you're sharing.
Very good.
All righty.
I should probably just say that, yes, I am a human sciences specialist in family finance with ISU Extension and Outreach. And I am not the only one. I am one of, there's supposed to be 10 of us when we're fully staffed. Right now we're at 8, I think. At any rate, I am one of a team of people who serve the state and provide information and education through lots of venues for the people of Iowa. And when Leah asked me about doing this, one of the places I wanted to start was with the fact that a lot of Americans are really not very financially stable. We talk about Financial Literacy Month, and literacy sort of implies what you know. But in addition, we also like to take it beyond financial literacy into financial capability and what you do. And we have, on the next slide, we have a tidbit that actually you've probably seen this before because it made a big news media splash 2 years ago, right about now. It was a research study that came out of regular research that is done by the federal government that indicated that 40% of Americans would be unable to deal with an unexpected expense of just $400. Now, that was pre-COVID. And then COVID hit about a year later, and COVID made evident some of the vulnerabilities in families' financial preparedness. Savings, having savings to cover an emergency like that is one. There are several others as well. How much debt you have and how it's set up is another. How you have insurance and how your savings relates to your insurance is another. And the stability of your income, which sometimes we can't control, but that does factor into our financial security. At the core, though, we really like to focus on saving. And so we have these 5 tips. And I do want to mention that these 5 tips for saving are also perfectly good tips if you're looking to find money for paying off a credit card bill that's overdue or that's really high interest, or if you're looking to find money to pay off that medical bill that was kind of big and it's taking you months to pay it off. So these same tips apply. You want to have a reason, and you want the reason to be meaningful to you. If you're just saving because your mother told you to, if you're just saving because you're supposed to, that's not going to work. You have to have a reason to save, and it has to be important to you. And that is a key to being successful in saving. You also need to be realistic. If you set yourself up and say, okay, starting next month, I'm going to save $300 a month. And if you've been unable to ever save at all before, depending on your financial situation, how tight your income is compared to your bills, that might be completely unrealistic. And if you set a completely unrealistic goal, you'll just give up. You'll just say, oh, this isn't for me. This doesn't work. I'm gonna give up. So make sure you set a goal that's realistic. Push yourself a little, but not too much. And build it into your plan. That's item 3 here. Because if you're going to want to save and you haven't been saving before, that means something is going to have to change. You're going to have to change how you're using some of your money. And so you have to figure that out and say, okay, in order to save, I'm going to only go out to eat twice a month instead of twice a week. In some way, you have to figure out what you're going to change in order to come up with that money. And then really treat it like a bill. Don't wait and see if there's something that's left over at the end of the month to save. You don't do that with your utility bill. You don't do that with your rent. Don't do that with your savings. If your savings matters to you, then treat it like a bill and do it right up front. Figure out which paycheck, if you're paid multiple times a month, figure out which paycheck is the one, or maybe it's some out of several paychecks, but treat your savings like a bill and just make sure that it happens. Do it before. Don't just wait and see what's left over. And then, as you know yourself, figure out what will help you stay motivated. Maybe it's having a chart. Maybe it's telling your friends every month you say, look, my savings account is up to $180. Wow, my savings account is up to $290, whatever. Or maybe it's having a chart on the wall. Maybe it's saying, once I get to a certain figure, and depending on your situation, that could be 250 or it could be 2,000. But once you get to a certain savings figure, you could say you're going to treat yourself. You're going to reward yourself with something. And that could be something that costs money, but it also could easily be some other kind of treat that doesn't cost money. And that would help you keep moving towards your goal. So as you look at saving, keep those tips in mind. Now, why people save, that data point, that piece of information about Americans' inability to save $400 or to have $400 on hand to cover an unexpected expense, that points to one of the key saving reasons that people might have, that we like to encourage people to have, if they can believe it's important. Again, it has to be a reason that's important to you. But to have an emergency fund is so valuable. It's the difference between having massive stress and drama in your life as compared to being able to just kind of coast gently over the ups and downs of life. Massive stress and drama is not something anybody likes. It leads to family conflict. It leads to friends who don't want to see you because they're afraid you're going to ask to borrow money. It leads to tension with your brother who you already borrowed money from last month. So avoiding that stress and drama is a really good reason to have an emergency fund. We think of emergency funds for things like, I need a new tire, or my transmission went out, or I have to call a plumber. We think of those kinds of emergencies, but I do like to remind people that the ultimate emergency and the way we measure our emergency fund adequacy is how long could you live on your savings if your income was cut off? The ultimate emergency is a reduction or loss of income. And that's what so many Americans faced starting about a year ago, was a reduction or a loss of income. Now, in a reduction of income that lasts a whole year, hardly anyone could have an emergency fund long enough to last that. But if your income was reduced and you had to wait a little while till unemployment kicked in, well, that emergency fund would be really great, wouldn't it? So we measure emergency funds by how long we could live on that income. We encourage people to look to have maybe 3 months worth, maybe more. But since people are often starting from scratch, I always think it's a huge accomplishment if they get to a 1 week or a 2 week emergency fund, because that just means that if you were out sick from work and you didn't get a paycheck that week because you don't work at a place that provides sick leave, then you could survive without having to leave your bills unpaid. And that's a wonderful feeling. It's a great security. Of course, people always use that money also for medical bills and other unexpected expenses, and then we have to replenish it. But having that emergency fund available for the ultimate emergency is really something that we like to encourage. Of course, people also save for purchases that they plan to make. You know, you want to get new furniture, your computer's getting really old and you feel like you want or need a new one. It's certainly long-term goals. You'd like to be able to buy a house 5 years from now, or you're looking at retirement. And of course, you want to save and really invest for retirement. The third reason that we like to remind people that they might want to save for is upcoming planned expenses. Sometimes people confuse these with emergencies. I've had people say to me, well, everything was fine until back to school season came. And then the kids needed all this stuff. And then everything went to heck. All my spending plan, all my bills didn't get paid because I spent money on the kids for back to school. Well, I really have to say to them, you know, everything wasn't okay. Because that wasn't a true emergency. I mean, that's the key thing here. Let's distinguish between things we know are coming and true unexpected expenses. We know back to school season is coming. If you weren't ready for back to school season, then everything wasn't okay. And so what we want to do is figure out how people can be ready for those expenses that don't come every month, but we do know they're coming. Once a year things like back to school is one of them, holidays of various types, even the state fair, spending however many days your family typically spends at state fair. That's a upcoming expense that you could know is coming. You might have property taxes every 6 months. You might have car insurance every 6 months, a whole range of things, as you can see on the screen. Sometimes people prepare for those in a kind of fluid, not very systematic way, but it's working for them, and that's great. For example, if they remember that, okay, right now we're in April. In June, my car insurance is due. That's 6 months worth of car insurance, and that's a big bill. So you know what? I'm going to pay my rent ahead in May. I'm going to pay an extra month's rent in May so that I can be ready in June, or I'm going to pay half an extra month's rent, something like that. People informally plan ahead and adjust. If that works for you, that's great. But I do want to encourage you to consider a really systematic method for being prepared for those occasional expenses. The first is to make a list. And we actually have, we didn't invent them, lots of places you can find like a calendar chart to list all of your occasional expenses. For me, January and July are the car insurance months. And November is a month when a lot of memberships are due, plus my car tags are due. And there are certain other months in the year when I have certain expenses. So if I list all those out, whether I just make a list or put them on a chart, and add it up for the year. Now, just say, for example, I figured out that the total was $2,400 for the year. That tells me that if I can set aside $200, I took my $2,400 and divided it by 12, because there's 12 months in a year. If I can set aside $200 a month for those expenses, put it in a place where I don't touch it for anything other than those expenses, then that gets me ahead and makes it so that I'm ready for those expenses. And what happens when my car insurance bill comes due, or all my memberships or my car tags come due? All I have to do is transfer the money, write the check or make the payment, and it's taken care of with no stress and no drama. And honestly, it's a wonderful feeling. If you try it 1 year and make it work, and then think back to how you felt a year ago in the months when all those big bills were due, you'll just be shocked at the comparison. Now, there is a kind of a but to this plan. The trick with this plan has to do with timing. If my bad month is July, say, and if I start doing this plan in June and I've saved up $200, but I have $800 worth of bills due in July, the timing is off. So one of the things I like to encourage, and now is a really good time for everybody to be thinking about this, is that you start with some seed money in this fund. I call this a periodic expense fund or an occasional expense fund, like a special fund that you have set aside just for these expenses. And if I put seed money in that fund out of my tax refund or out of my most recent stimulus check, and if I put seed money in that's equal to, say, 3 or 4 or even 5 months worth of contributions, then that probably will give me a jump start that will make it so that I'm good for the year. All I have to do is keep it up for the year. So in my scenario that I gave the example of $2,400 a year of expenses, if I used seed money of $800 or $1,000 and started that fund, and then added $200 every month and only took money out for those expenses, then I should be set, and I should never run into any of those timing problems that I mentioned. It's really something I encourage people to consider, particularly if your finances are tight. And I know that if your finances are tight, this seems difficult, but when you think about it, somehow you've made it through all this before in the past. And if you can have a systematic way, then it'll be much less of a scramble, much less stressful. to deal with those occasional expenses. One other piece that relates heavily to financial security is insurance. And I do need to say, all kinds of insurance are important. Car insurance matters, home or renter's insurance matters, all of those things matter. But health insurance may be the biggest deal for two reasons. One, because health costs can absolutely wipe us out. If something big happens health-wise, they can just completely wipe us out. And two, because health insurance is quite expensive as well. And so I want to focus a little bit on health insurance. Having health insurance is good for people in two important ways. It's good for your finances. It reduces the chance that you're going to have that financial disaster that could lead you to bankruptcy or could tie up your funds for years, paying off all those bills from one big medical incident. The other reason, and this is something people don't always think about, is that having health insurance is good for your health. They've done studies where they compared people with similar health situations, similar age, similar health conditions. The one who has health insurance has a better outcome in the long run because they're getting the preventive care, they're getting monitored, they're getting, maybe it's blood pressure treatment, maybe it's diabetes monitoring, whatever it might be. You have better health outcomes if you have health insurance. So we really like to encourage people to think about health insurance. And I specifically wanted to talk about it now because the recently passed American Rescue Plan, that added made some really huge expansions to some of the provisions of the Affordable Care Act so that more people are eligible for help paying for their health insurance, and so that those who are eligible for help are eligible for more help. And we can talk more about that if some of you have questions, but right now is a good time to look into health insurance, even if you in the past thought it wasn't affordable, wasn't something you can do. Things have changed. Now, these changes that are in place have been put in place for 2 years, for 2021 and 2022. And then they may go away. But while they're here, just take advantage of it now and get the health care you need for the time being. So that's a key element of financial security, insurance as a whole, and health insurance as another piece. Leah, my friend Leah, did some research and she found these wonderful little tips and these little facts about financial literacy kind of feed into our Financial Literacy Month topic. Parents who have 3 or more types of savings are more likely to have kids who discuss money with them. And isn't that amazing? Talking with your kids about money is good for your kids, and it can be good for the parents as well. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. Low-income workers attending an employee-sponsored financial education program were 11.5% more likely to participate in their 401k plan. So many people don't participate in their employer's retirement plan, and partly that's because they don't know. People need information, and it's not something that everybody learns everything they need to know in school and then they're done. Financial literacy is an ongoing task for our whole lives. In the green box, we've got nationwide testing demonstrates that the average parent lacks the basic financial knowledge to make careful financial decisions. I have to say, I have to confess here, This print is really small and I didn't memorize these facts and I don't remember what exactly they say, but they are 3 really wonderful tips that point out why financial literacy matters. And we often think in terms of how it matters for our kids, but we need to think in terms of it's a lifelong challenge to stay financial literate because everything keeps changing. The laws keep changing. Tax laws change all the time. We just had this new change to the health insurance marketplace that creates all new opportunities. If people don't know about them, then they can't take advantage of them. We got 3 kind of examples here from one of the blog posts on our Money Tips blog. But we have 3 examples of situations where adults, full-grown, successful adults, missed something and that cost them substantial money. Somebody who discovered too late that her medical providers weren't in the network for her new health insurance plan. And so suddenly she has way bigger copays and a much higher deductible because she chose a plan that didn't have her network, her providers in the network. We see all the time people who retire and maybe retire early, but then they discover they really weren't prepared to retire. And so they have to go back to work and they're playing catch up then on their retirement. We have another common example of where people buy a product. In this case, it was a car. After they bought this car, they discovered by experience and then by looking, because somebody said, oh yeah, Consumer Reports rated that model's reliability as really poor. Consumer Reports magazine, we don't generally promote anything commercial. Consumer Reports is a completely nonprofit organization, and they do their ratings of products using products that they purchase at the store, like all the rest of us. They don't get products given to them. So Consumer Reports is considered gold standard reliable when it comes to product ratings. And I've always personally relied on their car ratings when I'm making a big purchase like a car. And they're a great place to turn for information about buying other products as well. At any rate, this couple learned a lesson after buying that unreliable car. And the next time they bought a car, they looked at Consumer Reports. Those are examples of where financial literacy matters throughout our entire lives, because products change, laws change, financial products change. It's really something. The other thing we've got going for us here is that it's almost graduation season. If you have people in your world who are graduating, and this could be from high school or from college, thinking about, have you equipped them for the financial decisions of adulthood? What kinds of education and experiences have you given them? If you're the parent of an upcoming high school graduate, and if you haven't done all this, there is still a little time to catch up. But even more importantly, if you're the parent of a 14-year-old, you can start now in thinking about these skills. One of the skills, setting realistic expectations. How many young people, having lived in their parents' house and having a relatively high standard of living, they head out into the real world and they think they're being cheated if they can't have as good a life as their parents had. We need to help young people have realistic expectations, because if we don't, they'll overspend. We need to help them be resourceful in solving problems, to see that there's more than one way to solve a problem. You don't have to go out if you're hungry. You can have food at home. And I mean, that's a really simplistic example. The ability to evaluate information wisely, including advertisements, so that you don't get pulled into purchasing something or choosing an insurance policy that isn't the right choice for you. Consumer privacy skills are critical. Understanding how checkbooks work and whether or not they keep a checkbook register, they need to really understand how it works and keep tabs on it so that they avoid overdrafts. They need opportunities to comparison shop. You can start this with your kids as young as 6 or 7 years old, that opportunity to compare. And then being aware of credit management, being aware of what it means to have debt and how you manage that debt and how your future ability to get loans will be affected by how you manage your debt now. And certainly along with that, if they're going to college, the student loan implications are important. Those are key things to start working on now with your middle school and high schooler kids so that they're better equipped when they move on to college. And then there are some things you can specifically do that will help make sure that your graduate is a little better protected. For example, if you're sending someone off to college, make sure they get renter's insurance in their apartment or even in their dorm. Sometimes that's appropriate. Double check and make sure the car insurance coverage is good for them and check on their health insurance. So reduce their risks by looking at their insurance and trying to explain that to them as well. You see the tips on the screen. Remind them of copays. Make sure they know where their health insurance card is, even that, helping them to think ahead. And since they don't necessarily know what their tax situation will be, they could start out with their W-4s filled in with 0 exemptions so that more will be withheld just to play it safe. That's particularly important for people who have multiple part-time jobs. That may not be important for a college student who's only working 10 or 15 hours a week, but for college grads who are getting their first real paycheck and don't know much about what their tax burden will be, they want to think carefully about having enough withheld from their paycheck. And then, keep the door open with your kids. Be ready to talk with them, be ready to encourage them, be ready to model problem solving with them, help them think through difficult decisions. It depends on the situation, I would say, but I am not necessarily going to advocate that you fix their problems for them, but keep the door open and be a person they want to talk to, they want to consult with. Don't be a person that will just condemn them if they make a mistake. So be ready to be supportive and helpful. And as those young people move through college, they'll respect and wish for your opinion more. We've got terrific resources at the ISU Extension and Outreach website. When you get to the Human Sciences homepage, we've got you can see the tab there marked Finances, and you can learn a lot about the different programming that ISU Extension offers in the realm of financial management. And you'll find links to other reliable resources. If you find a link on our page, you can be sure that it's to a non-commercial and trustworthy organization if it links outside of our pages. And Leah has popped the page right up there so you know how to get to this page. And now it's time for questions and answers. This is where I get to get nervous, right?
Yeah, no. We've got nice, easy questions. You work right in a county office, so it's not abnormal to just have, the door open and somebody come in with you don't know what question. So this is just the same. You just don't have them talking across your desk.
That's right.
So our comment section, I was there the entire time, just adding resource after resource. So again, if you're watching now or catching us later after the live is over, ensure that you go down there. I tried to kind of give you the title of what you'd be clicking on, but it kind of follows the flow. I matched, what Barb was saying with the resource and the research that she was referencing. All right. So like recapping, you really touched on three main things. So do you want to just recap those three broad areas we covered today?
We looked at basic financial security, and what are some of the elements of that, and then how to move towards better financial security. And we looked at financial literacy and why it matters throughout our entire lives. And we just barely touched on health insurance, which is a really timely topic now.
Yeah.
So those were the three topics.
Yeah. And for insurance, I was able to share quite a few links. So while you verbally weren't able to get maybe as deep as you would have liked in the overview, there's a lot of support there. And one of the first comments that I added was the link to you and your colleagues. So for people interested in learning more or connecting, if you can find your families, you can find your Barb wherever you live in Iowa. You can find your Barb. They're not all named Barb, but you can reach out and find that local specialist, that family finance specialist, and connect with them on these resources, what we've talked about. You can set up consultations with your finance specialist in your area, and they can certainly provide you with all kinds of information. We've got great programs going on right now, most of which are done virtually. So there's just a lot of great sources out there. And I always enjoy knowing who's the specialist in my area, which for me is Barb. So Barb is my Barb. It's really handy. It's really handy.
And I will just mention that when it comes to in individual consultations, we can do that in a lot of different ways. So, as COVID maybe eases off, we can maybe be doing some of that face-to-face, depending on people's immunization status and their comfort levels and so on. In addition, we can do it on the phone. We can provide information by email. We can do a Zoom meeting or a webcast to get together. So whatever your comfort level and whatever the distances are, there is a way that we can meet with you.
Yeah.
Your family finance specialist could be 2 hours away from you, and a Zoom meeting might work really well. So,
or like you said, over the phone, email, etc. All right. So there's a few things you said that I pulled out as quotes because they were so good. This was one of them. Plan what you will change to come up with money to save. And that for me was like literally the wow right there. Because I can tell you that through my adult life, or really just as in high school with jobs, I might have had those smaller goals, but I never necessarily knew or thought through like, okay, but if I want to reach this goal, I'm going to have to make some changes. So that was really, really powerful. And I think you talked a little bit about the timing as well. And this might have been in a different segment, but my mind's combining them. That if a month where you've got those, was it those periodic expenses? If you're trying to start saving the month before that all hits, you might have set yourself up here
for failure.
Yes. And that was actually another quote. Timing is key. Start with seed money. And you did mention there's some things right now that maybe you are going to have a tax return this year. Maybe you have had a stimulus check that has come in that you don't need to use for those immediate needs, which many will need to use those dollars for. But if you don't, that might be that start of that seed money for those expenses. And I pulled up. Oh, sorry.
Go
you
ahead.
finish.
I love being able to talk about saving for those periodic or occasional expenses at this time of year, because this time of year people have seed money. Most people have seed money because of taxes, and even more so this year because of the stimulus payments.
I pulled up, so you mentioned this periodic expenses. This is a blog post, and I believe it was in this one, possibly another link. I put a lot of links in there that takes you to an Excel spreadsheet. And I pulled that up while you were talking about it. And I thought, oh man, there's my homework, because it really did list out, changing tires, car registrations. That's one for us, car registrations, that every year we pay them. Every year we forget about them until we get that bill in the mail and we're like, oh yeah, every year. And the back to school shopping did have me giggling because, again, I have 3 kids. I've had 3 kids for a while now, and yet still every year it's like, oh, Christmas shopping or there's certain holidays that they like to get new outfits for, and all of a sudden that's an expense that has like snuck up on me, even though I've done it for a few years now. Okay. And then I think some other things that really hit me, and I'm going to guess, as we have viewers watching this maybe later in the evening, I'm going to guess there might be 1 or 2, loved ones that are going to spring some tears into their eyes as we talk about graduates. It is early April, which means we are all a month away from getting, or probably starting now, getting some of those grad invite. And you're getting them in the mail going, no, there's no way this person is graduating. Like, absolutely not. 100% cannot. But it's true. And a lot of graduates often get those cards with the dollars in it, and how are we equipping them, with this income of money that's coming in, but also as they are, potentially leaving our homes. And you hit a nerve, Barb, because you said maybe it's not those seniors, but, with your 14-year-olds. And I have a 16-year-old and an almost 13-year-old. And I thought, oh, she is talking to me right now because my babies are getting close to.
I wasn't targeting you, though.
I'm back here like dabbing my eyes.
Yeah. I have another thing to mention. Just, if you've got some graduates in your lives and you want to give them a gift. Money is a great gift to give graduates. I think it's the most common, but another really good gift. How about a shredder?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, because they need to remember to protect their privacy. Or a file box or some kind of box so that how many people come into our volunteer income tax site and can't find last year's tax return? They need a place to keep their important papers. Think about those things when you're looking at possible gifts.
So it feels like you're telling me my massive pile of random papers that I don't know where to put, but I also know to not get rid of. You're telling me that's not the best way to store my taxes from last year, that I should get a box?
Well,
that might be a good tip.
I'm not going to say that. Chances are you still have it. And if you looked for it, you could find it. It just would take you a while. Yeah. So I'm not going to say, no, this is terrible, because you still have yours.
I have the pile. It is there.
What I find is when people move, then and that's another, college students move a lot, or recent high school graduates, even if they don't go to college, they move frequently. Help them to think about how to keep important papers findable when they move.
We, my husband and I don't remember if it was like a wedding gift or it's just something we got in our early years of marriage, but a fireproof box. And it's not large. It's like the size of a briefcase pretty much. But that was something that we have kept, just important things, sentimental things, but also those documents that you really want to keep track of. And makes me think that could maybe be a better place. I had another quote. No, we did that one. This one. Yes. That one was really like, ooh, because really the ultimate loss, which many, many people experienced in this last year with the pandemic, was a loss, a complete loss of income or reduction of income. And then that follow-up question of how long could you last? That's really a good, indicator of how much money you might need. And, I'm trying to remember that I feel like there was like a rule of thumb, like, is it 6 months? Like, is there
a common recommendation is 3 to 6 months. Mm-hmm. That's a common recommendation. That for people who are starting from scratch, that's an overwhelming goal. Mm-hmm. If they can get to a month, that's huge. That's massive. So you need to set your goal in a way that's going to help you feel successful along the way. So usually it's, start with a smaller goal. And once you reach that, then build beyond that. I will mention that back in 2008-ish, 8 and 9, when the Wall Street crash occurred, I heard TV pundits saying things like, boy, people need 12 to 18 months of emergency funds.
Oh, wow.
And it depends on what kind of a job you have, mm-hmm. and how long it might take you to find new work.
Yeah.
And in that case, they were talking about Wall Street bankers who they're not going to find a comparable position just tomorrow or next month.
No.
So, so it's kind of all relative, but for the average person, 3 to 6 months is a common rule of thumb.
Yeah.
But you
I
have
like
to
what
put
you said. And start somewhere, celebrate when you get to that 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, when, those victories are still something to be excited about. All right. We've got a couple of resources that we want to highlight. So Barb, do you want to talk a little bit about AnswerLine and why someone might connect with our AnswerLine specialists regarding finances?
AnswerLine is our absolutely brilliant resource in the College of Human Sciences Extension and Outreach that deals with all sorts of home and family questions. And I know for a fact that most of the questions they get relate to food and cooking and those kinds of things. But they can also be a place to turn when you're thinking of making a purchase and you want to know, what should I look for if I want to get a good vacuum cleaner? if I want to or if I'm planning to remodel my kitchen, what can I turn to think about floor plans that are going to make sense? Or if I'm buying a new stove or refrigerator, those kinds of things. What should I look for? So the AnswerLine folks, while they are brilliant at answering questions about food substitutions and food safety and so on, they also can be brilliant about questions in family finance. And they even can be a place where if you're looking for a tool, a spending plan tool, and you can't find one someplace else, they could send you one. They could email something to you.
Yeah, and you can find more by visiting the Human Science homepage on AnswerLine, or you can email them right at answer@istate.edu. And I can tell you from experience, they're pretty prompt in their responses. I have done a handful of times, reached out to them, some recipe related, like I found a recipe I wanted to make, but I wanted to freeze it. And I just wasn't sure if I needed to make adjustments to the recipe for that. But I've also emailed them when I was looking for just some reliable resources like that market research. And they just did a great job of providing me with a handful of trustworthy sources that provided that answer for me. Another one of our amazing opportunities through Iowa State Extension and Outreach is Iowa Concern. It's a free 24/7 phone call away, and you will be connected with a specialist that can help you with a great many things, pretty much anything. But ultimately, it's just that free, like I said, 24/7 confidential service that when you're not quite sure who to turn to, you can turn to Iowa Concern.
Right. Yeah, Iowa Concern was, I don't know if it's this mission statement, but basically its purpose is to help people address virtually anything that causes stress. So it's just about anything. Yeah. And what they will not tell you what to do, just like I will not tell you what to do, but they can tell you what your options are. And when it's the hotline that I talk about most, because when people have financial issues or challenges, there often is also a legal element involved. And that's true for many things that involve stress or that create stress, that there's a legal side. My landlord's not treating me right. I think I'm being, or he says I have to do this and I don't believe him. What are my rights and responsibilities? Or I'm not being treated fairly at work, or I have a consumer complaint and I can't get any results. One of the things the AnswerLine has is an attorney on staff.
Very handy.
And so that attorney never takes a case. It's actually two different people, like one's full-time and one's part-time, but they won't take your case, but they will give you information about what the law says about your situation. And they can help you figure out what might be good next steps to take. When you, maybe there's a government agency that can help you address this problem. Or if you need to write a letter, maybe they can help you figure out what words to put in the letter, to help make it effective. They won't officially represent you in any way, but they can sure help you figure out how to approach your problem.
Absolutely. All right. So again, for most of the things we've talked about, you can access them through the Human Science homepage. You can find information on programs coming up. Again, like I said, most of our programs have virtual opportunities, which means that Iowans get experiences no matter where you're at, no matter what couch or kitchen table you're sitting at. You have the opportunity to join in on the education and the resources. And again, one of our earlier comments, one of the first ones that I left was connecting you to your local family finance specialist in your area. Again, Barb is my Barb, but you have your own financial specialist that you can reach out to, and they can connect you with those resources more local to your area and needs. All right, if you are watching this after our live is over, again, please add any questions, comments, or if you have found quotes that Barb said throughout like I did, and you want to just be like, wow, that was really impactful, throw those in the comment section. If you do have questions, I'll make sure that Barb gets those. Here's some information on how you can continue to connect with us. So one is reaching out to Barb. And again, Barb might not be the one that's able to help you depending on your area, but she certainly will connect you to who that person is. And then also ensure that you're following us on our social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And as this is Financial Literacy Month, you're going to notice that we continue to share information throughout this month focused on quite a bit of things that Barb shared and more. All right, Barb, you survived your first Facebook Live.
And it wasn't even painful.
I know, right? I'm going to get you a button or something that you are now. And and I think we're going to find people are going to have some questions that are going to lead us to probably coming back for a second Facebook Live at some point. I think your information was great, and they're going to want you to expand a little bit more. So, all right, check out the comments for loads and loads of links to resources, and we hope that you guys have a great day. Enjoy the sun.